if leadership and culture development aren't delivering, it's probably not for a lack of effort. I mean, the leak isn't in terms of effort, that we're not trying hard enough. It's usually in terms of architecture. We haven't built a system that's going to continue to build on itself over time.
This is the Leaders Rising podcast. Creating bigger futures, building thriving cultures. We believe you can become a leader worth following.
My wife and I were having a fun conversation about something she saw on Instagram this weekend about, if I win the lottery, I won't tell anyone, but there will be signs, and then they have some kind of, simple luxury or whatever, like all the cheese you can eat or something. But we were saying, around here, we live in a part of the country where summer is a precious commodity. And we were saying, you may not be able to tell this summer, but there will be signs. And what's the one thing you will always do when you just tell yourself it's summer? And for me, it really involves wearing shorts as often as possible. It's not warm here today, but I refuse to put long pants back on.
I think for me, it's wearing sandals or going barefoot. Mm-hmm. I just completely change one kind of shoe all day, every day until summer's over. And when we go to the beach on vacation, the only time I'll put shoes on is when we go out to the grocery store. Around the house, up and down the street, down to the beach. Even if we have to cross a road, I'm still just going to wear sandals. What about you, Mike? What's summer in your world?
Yeah, for me, is getting to the beach as often as possible. So I don't live too far from the beach. And my wife will give me a hard time. There's a coffee shop that is 1 block from the beach that I'll go work out of. And she's like, Mike, you can't even see the water. I'm like, no, but I know it's there.
Nice. I like it.
What about you, Becky?
Sign of summer for me, it being a redhead, is my sunscreen goes with me everywhere I go. Just to make sure.
It's good.
That is true for me this summer for other reasons. That's another podcast episode all on its own, but I've been very mindful of sunscreen and shade more so than ever, which I can't quite say I'm a fan of, but it's okay. Well, Becky, you are the reason we're here today because you introduced us to this article about training and development. What piqued your interest specifically about this article?
I liked it because it spoke so clearly to what it is we do and affirms what we do and why we do it. We know these things anecdotally because we're inside organizations, we're hearing them, we're seeing them, we're watching them be lived out or not. And sometimes it's nice to get confirmation from something like a survey where they're surveying across other organizations and industries and getting the same answers that we've come to know ourselves. And so wanted to share that with guys that I work with so that you would have that same sense of affirmation that I did.
Well, it's definitely got my wheels spinning, and there's data all throughout. So let's dive right in. I'm curious. We haven't talked about this at all amongst the four of us, but I'm glad all four of us are on to get 4 different takes about what the article entailed. So, Becky, kick us off. What's the one thing that stands out to you most in terms of the data, the narrative, the points that are in this article?
There were some very actionable things in here, and it would have been easy to dive in and say, let's incorporate that or let's make sure that's true. But when I got to the end of the article, what it did was really zoom back out and say, what does this whole thing say to me? And it really was about that solid leadership development requires intention and a plan. So intention, we have the desire to develop our leaders well. We understand the importance of it. We put resources and things behind it. And not only do we believe in it, but we're going to take the action step to create a plan to make sure that that happens at all levels of our leadership and how it informs our culture, the whole big picture.
Mike, I'm curious, what stood out to you?
To back up Becky's point, I found it interesting, probably two levels here. One, only 11% of executives are happy with their leadership development process. And within that, there's a whole chart that mentions the priority skills that executives are leaning into. And it traces it back 6 years. And the 2 things that I found interesting from that chart were that innovation is on the uptick. So leaders wanting to train and develop their employees around innovation, things like AI. So that didn't surprise me at all. But the other thing that was a tick up too, category wise, was around employee engagement. And so the correlation really piqued my interest around innovation that is on the rise, but also a lack of employee engagement that must also be on the rise for executives to want to spend time there. And I think there's we can talk about it later, but I think there's a direct correlation between those two and some of the work that we do at LRN.
Jeff, what about you?
Yeah, it's funny because we haven't talked about this before, but the same stat jumped out to me, Mike. I usually, my initial take is always to what's the big picture idea here, but then what's like one specific line that really captured my interest along the way. And the first one I highlighted was the 11% number. It says it's a recent McKinsey study says 11% of executives basically don't think their leadership efforts are effective. And that just made me think of like, okay, so like 89% of the stuff that's going on out there isn't working in one way, shape, or form. And jokingly, like even just among our team, I was like, well, then 89% of people need to talk to us because this is the problem we like to solve. But there's a whole lot of activity without a lot of effectiveness that just gets me scratching my head about, what's working, what's not working. And I know the article goes into that, but that was the first thing that got my interest in the article.
And we'll link to the full article from ATD in the show notes on our Learning Center. So you can follow along, read along, pull out your own insights. For me, the priority skills for leadership development, they've ranked these. And looking at each individual one, there's 15, 20 skills here. And all of the first 4 and most of the top 10 are all around the people side of leadership. And I've said this for a long time, leadership isn't taught. The people skills aren't taught in education programs, whether it's in business school, graduate programs, no matter what industry you're in. There's so little education around this, around how you practically do it. And so coaching, communication skills, team leadership, emotional intelligence are all the top 4. And all 4 of those have been in the top 5 for the last 6 years. So there's no change at the top of that chart. And so we're seeing some trend. We're seeing some consistency there. So let's go to the root cause side of this. And I'll come back to you, Becky. When you think about having an intention and having a plan and the gap there, what's the root cause issue that you're seeing from where you sit and from your industry experience throughout your career?
I'd like to say it's simple enough to say there's just one root cause, but it's probably not true. And if you were to ask those leaders, I think it'd be a number of things. One might be time. This takes time, people away from the job. Maybe the organization's too focused working in the business as opposed to standing back and looking at the business and what it needs. I think the article points out the fact that it's not as simple as sending people to training and having them come back and be fantastic leaders. So it's more complex to create that development than just hosting a training class. So that takes, again, intentionality, effort, and a plan. And then are they committing to having the resources and putting the money behind leadership development as well? And some organizations aren't in a position to, or maybe we don't understand the value for them to say, this is important, we're going to commit resources to this.
I think the priority and investment of money is a great opportunity that we talk about a lot. And, one of our clients works in construction, in roofing, and we say you can't doubt that you need a new roof. When it rains and water's pouring through your roof, you can't mistake the fact that you need a new one or a repair. But the people side, training and development, often feels like something that, well, I haven't seen it work or I haven't seen it done well. Is this really going to help the bottom line? Can I actually spend money to make money or spend money to save money? It seems like such a foreign concept. What would you say to that, Becky?
I know that it's always been a challenge in talent development to prove the worth of the non-technical skills. I don't want to say soft skills because they're not soft. They're
power skills.
Obviously, power skills for sure. Those people skills. It's not impossible, but it can be difficult to do that. And if we can't find a way to make a case for that, it'd be easy for those that hold the purse strings to say, well, I've got other things I can show will make a difference on my bottom line in one way or another. So I will invest in those instead.
Mike, coming over to you. When you think about innovation and engagement, where does your mind go in terms of what's happening at the root and the foundation of those issues for leaders?
My mind, we're in a transitionary period to where we are coming out of an era that has lasted for several centuries, to where everything has been simply about knowledge, headspace. And so to me, it makes sense that, like, going back to the chart that you referred to, Aaron, some of the innovation stuff, skills that executives are paying attention to within their leadership development is on the rise, as it should be. So I'm not denying the need to understand those things and use those things. I use those things in my own work. But the side that is often missed is, I see a scrambling for employee engagement rather than employee understanding. And so how do we raise the bar on some of the relational, intangible pieces to development rather than just filling more headspace with knowledge? How do we raise the EQ and the PQ in a room? And so much of that then goes back to some of the trust, some of the people development stuff that is so important to build into our leadership development pipelines.
Mike, you and I were with a client last week, and we were talking about this gap between the personal side and the professional side. And sometimes in a professional setting, we don't want to talk about personal things, but at the end of the day, every one of us showing up to work are humans. We're people. And so there is very much a relational side, a relational foundation to the fact that we are humans, and human resources should probably tap into the human side, not just for the sake of taking care of it outside of work, but for all the reasons we talked to Natalie about the power and importance of HR back in episode 2. There's a really powerful opportunity for us to lean into the human side. So Jeff, on the human side, only 11% of these efforts are considered successful right now. What does that tell you about the root cause behind this and how we overcome it?
Yeah, I think if leadership and culture development aren't delivering, it's probably not for a lack of effort. I mean, I'm sure 89% of people would tell you we're doing stuff, right? We're pouring stuff into our people, and yet it seems like there's a leak somewhere, right? And so it's usually not, and the leak isn't in terms of effort, that we're not trying hard enough. It's usually in terms of architecture. We haven't built a system that's going to actually, continue to build on itself over time. I think a lot of what we experience with clients who are trying to figure this thing out is that there's been a patchwork of things, but all those seams tend to spark leaks over time. And so, it's creating a more integrated system. And the things you're already doing, like, that's another myth I think a lot of our clients run into, is that we've got to change everything to fix this. And rather it's just, what are the things you're doing every day already, the way that you communicate on Slack or Google Chat or whatever, or Teams, whatever it is, and the meetings that we're already having. How do we integrate and adapt and, innovate in these spaces where we already show up? So we're not like replacing what we're doing. We're not doing all new different things. We're just adding more intentionality in the places where we already meet, in the meetings that we already have, in the things we're already doing for our clients.
I think that's a really powerful point. And there's so much of what we do that is not one size fits all. We're trying to meet people with the resources they already have, the skills that are already on their team. Now, how do we maximize the impact of this by taking that one step further, going a little bit deeper? And I think a lot of times you try to shoehorn a square peg into a round hole with training, a development process, a system that you're trying to put into practice in your business. And if it just doesn't work for your business, it's not going to work. And so rather than doing that, it's far more beneficial and helpful to customize or build a custom approach to how we put those together.
Within that own area that Jeff is speaking to, I think of the difference between a classroom and a lab. And so much of our education system, and I'm not trying to throw anything under the bus, but so many things are approached from a classroom mentality. Let us hand off the knowledge of skills to you, rather than let us create a lab that we can experience these tools together, because our experience is going to be much more formative and lasting within the cultures we're trying to create around leadership development.
I think it's interesting, Mike, as you're talking about this information age, the change that we're in. We're talking about education systems. So much of education is about and has been about information. And it's actually AI that's the impetus for a lot of the changes that we're sensing and feeling. And in fact, AI is the theme or the reason behind this article, and why they published it was how AI is impacting changes in how training and development are happening, how they're becoming more intentional. I want to hone in on the intentionality and how we've seen intentional practices lived out. We've talked about some of the challenges, we've talked about the data, but take us inside an organization. Where have you seen a company do training, do development well in a way that has increased team performance? It's increased their employee engagement and delivered on the business results that they're seeking to attain.
I've got a couple quick thoughts on that. And one is just a quick hit on the AI curve that you mentioned. It's real. I mean, every client, every business we talk to is having a conversation, probably more meetings than they want to, that include the words AI. And AI is not a magic trick. It's not going to make everything better for you overnight. But what I have found, it's true for me, it's true for our company, it's true for our clients, is that AI is an amplifier. If things are chaotic and unclear, it's just going to make things more chaotic and unclear. If things are strategic and directed, it's going to help you narrow in on those things. So it's not going to fix problems for you. It's just going to amplify what's already true. My take, that's my hot take for the day, Aaron. You can put that on my social medias. But I think in terms of a client that I think is getting this right, and I actually love this. This is a growing organization. It's a nonprofit. It's a regional solution to a problem we all have. That's all I can say about it, because I have to keep it a little discretionary. They've decided to go all in on high touch, not high tech right now. Is that leadership development for them is about people. It's about a relationship. It's about who knows you, who do you know, how are you using your influence in our community, on our teams. And that was a challenge to us at first because we use some online platforms and we're pretty good at Zoom delivery when we need to do it. And for them, it was, nope, this is going to be in person. This is going to be person to person. And I just love the willingness to kind of buck the trend, or to, just ask about, hard questions about who they really wanted to be, what they wanted to be about in this moment. There's a whole bunch of their business that includes high tech parts. So it's not that they're just ignoring that technology exists. They're just making a strategic choice that people development is about people. And we're able to come alongside them in some meaningful ways, into meetings that they were already having. And we build culture and leadership development into all those places. It's innovative because it's low tech. That's what I loved about it.
That's where I've seen, working with some organizations over the years around change management, the issue is not necessarily the maneuvers of change. It's the trust behind change. And so the more that things go back to, you mentioned it, Aaron, within the skill set mentioned in the article, your top skills are about the people side, developing the trust, open communication. That's where change often breaks down. It's not the maneuvers of change, but it's the people side. And I'm sure all of us have examples of seeing that break down within organizations and companies we've worked with.
I think change is happening all around us. It's happening at such a fast rate that we've got to pay attention to things that form the foundation of culture and people. And you're right, Mike. You can't navigate change in a silo. You can't go up into your ivory tower and just make up a plan and lord that over everyone. You have to guide people through it. You have to navigate. If you've walked a journey through change yourself to adopt a plan, a vision, you've got to walk somebody along a similar pathway. And at the foundation of it, that all comes back to our voice, understanding voice perspectives, how inclined we are to change, and down to the minutia of details. I was just on with one of our strategic partners in the last hour, hosting a group, and we were talking about how they could build tactics and build a tactical approach to living out the strategy of their organizations, sub-organizations. And I think back to information. There can be information overload We develop so many policies, so many procedures. We end up getting lost and drowning under this a huge pile of information and data and insights. So help us, somebody help us, walk us through how do we start exploring some of these paths if we haven't thought about it in this way, or we're trying to consider how do we build towards a bigger, brighter future in terms of our people and leadership development. Point us in the right direction.
Aaron, what you're describing there is a map. We need a map, right? And so the point of any map is to, I'm guessing often the first thing you look for is you are here, right? Where am I on this map? And I love the questions the article provides for us. Those of you who are looking for it online, or if you've got the PDF, it's on page 26 of the magazine. But there's 6 questions there. How do we define effective leadership development? And I think that's a gold mine right there. If you just want to start with, one of those questions is, are other companies trying to recruit our leaders? That's a powerful question, because that means you're doing something right, because you've got some all-stars on your team and others are looking to draft them to their teams. Again, there's 6 of those. Becky, Mike, maybe there's one of those that jump out to you that you'd like to offer a comment on, but that's a good place to start.
I think the idea, are you attracting high potential future leaders? Because I think if you're able to attract high potential leaders, you're going to be able to attract high potential employees as well, which you can then continue to grow into to build your pipeline so that you have a store of upcoming talent in your organization.
Yeah, that's a great point, Becky. So, Becky, help us bring this to a close. As we always do on the podcast, what's one move? Because we always want to invite people to an action step, to do something. What's one bold move that leaders could take based on the insights in this article to start to change their system?
I'm going to start with one that I don't want you to do. Don't hold another workshop. Probably not going to get you the result that you're hoping for. So instead, what I would do is something that's easy to say, hard to do. And I think that's to look at your intention. If only 11% of leaders are happy with their leadership development, what do you really want from your leadership development? What are you trying to create? And will you, with intention, move forward to make that happen, knowing that your leaders are the ones that set the temperature, define the culture of your organization, and will you be willing to put the intention in to make that happen?
I think intention is such a powerful word. And you started us with the data around be intentional, have a plan. You're wrapping us up there. Knowing the why is a powerful motivator, a powerful driver, and it gives us some guardrails to keep us on track to know what we're doing each and every day. Well, thanks, team. This was a great conversation, great article, great resources, and as Jeff mentioned a few minutes ago, 6 powerful questions included in this article. We'll link to that and a bunch of other resources in the show notes on our Learning Center at leadersrisingnetwork.com. Well, Mike, Becky, Jeff, thanks so much for hopping on today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Leaders Rising Network podcast. Connect with us on LinkedIn or visit online at leadersrisingnetwork.com.